What up, family? Welcome back to Colonial Outcast. We're finally back from a month-long hiatus, starting with our episode with Amanda Seals on Monday, followed by our episode on Putting a Dick in the Box on Tuesday, and
Dick
now here to
Cheney.
cover an episode that's, Dick Cheney, in case you don't know. That's been long planned and long overdue about the incessant exploitation and colonization of Africa, but also the revolutionary optimism brewing among citizens of the wealthiest continent on the planet, starting with Burkina Faso. We'll be trying to cover as much as we can of the continent with Molombo, who is a Congolese American artist, activist, and creator based in Los Angeles. He is the creator of Zairu. Did I say it right this time? Did I actually get it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. That's an improvement. A groundbreaking project that weaves African mythology and the Black diaspora. He holds degrees in sociology, ethnic studies from CU Boulder, and a master's in legal studies from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles, as well as host Greg Stoker, ex-Army Ranger turned anti-war activist and journalist. This episode happens to align with the news of a quote-unquote ceasefire agreement by the RSF in Sudan. We'll go into more detail about what the ceasefire really means, what the RSF really is, their genesis, and the internal dynamics of Sudan. But in my reductionist nutshell, the RSF is a collection of Western-backed terrorist militiamen who come from tribes that have been convinced through imperial divide and conquer historical rhetoric that they are Arab, and therefore willingly serve as the mercenaries for the United Arab Emirates for their gold trade. Of course, this ceasefire has conveniently been called for only after the gold-rich Darfur region is now in the hands of the UAE proxies. If this sounds familiar, it should be. It should. The quote-unquote ceasefire in Gaza has been announced after the valuable marine gas-rich real estate has been completely flattened. Jared Kushner and his Saudi real estate barons at Affinity Partners are now getting their development surveys ready for their new prospects after Israeli terrorist mercenaries have done their part. But of course, none of these are really ceasefires, just like none of these are truly conflicts or wars. They are democides designed to clear out populations for the extraction of whatever the Epstein class wants on these lands, just like their land grabs here stateside with J.D. Vance's new acre trader, in case you don't know about that. So welcome, gentlemen. Good to have you back. Greg, hope your gardening's going good. Molombo, this has been a long time coming. Over a year, I've been wanting to have an episode with you about this very subject, and I think we just missed each other in the fray, so...
Yeah, we've actually been meaning to touch on this forever. So this is, I guess this is the time to start. So, real quick, Molombo, that project that Mark mentioned, the African mythology one. I was looking at one of your stories. Is that like a tabletop RPG or something?
Yeah. I hit the nail on the head. TTRPG. Awesome. You familiar?
I mean, I have a ton of.
There we go.
Stuff. I got Lord of the Rings, RPGs. Yeah, so
Greg's about to geek out right now.
That's absolutely awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I usually have to tell people if they don't know TTRPGs, I just say I'm making a board game, and then I should stop doing that because like
rocket propelled grenade.
You know what I mean? No, valid. The RP, not the RPG part. It's just I feel like the idea of make believe but with rules sometimes goes over people's heads if they're not familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, it's a board game, but that's awesome that you play 5e. Really sick there, Greg.
Yeah, well,
also nice to hear you clearly too outside the boat.
Yeah, well, glad to be on a boat. We will not be running in our group a amphibious campaign in the near future. So, anyways, guys, it's good to be back. Even if the Earth seems like a giant oozing dumpster fire right now, I just started working a couple days ago again. Venezuela's popping up. Nigeria apparently might. Israel is about to refocus on military action in the south of Lebanon. And our comprador regional ally state, the UAE, is up to some bullshit in Sudan. And the U.S. and Israel have massive interests in Sudan for many reasons, one of which has to do with establishing a deep water port on the Red Sea to isolate the Houthis, which the RSF have been employed to fight before during the civil war in Yemen, and disrupt the maritime Silk Road aspect of China's Belt and Road Initiative, and 100 other reasons. And also gold, which I think Molombo is going to get into here shortly. But I was talking to my partner last weekend about restarting the podcast, and I mentioned Sudan and Venezuela as main topics to demonstrate the dynamics of the U.S. empire. And she was like, oh, my God, do I have to learn about a whole other thing? Yeah, that's the answer. But like now I will say that, like, she's a brilliant investigative journalist with an expansive knowledge of the carceral and police state here domestically, but foreign policy, geopolitics requires a knowledge base that frankly takes years to cultivate, especially with a place like Sudan with over 500 ethnic groups, 400 languages, a history of Arab invasions, British colonial rule, a series of complex civil wars that spilled into surrounding countries, and foreign interference from just about every actor imaginable. So let's do some, I wanted to kind of like take 5 minutes before we really open up and do some baby steps for some folks, starting with an established knowledge base. Israel and its propaganda apparatus, because the UAE, a close security partner of Israel, is supporting a genocidal Arab supremacist militia in the east of Sudan called, as Mark mentioned, the RSF. And since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, Israeli Hasbarists, or Hasbaristas, as I like to call them, have been pointing to Sudan saying, see, that's a real genocide. Literally all while reposting Emirati propagandists in Dubai cheering on RSF gains in Darfur. So something isn't really adding up from a messaging perspective. And I just wanted to bring on the social media aspect and the kind of information war that's being waged, at least on some platforms, about what's happening in Sudan right now. This kind of going to play the first 90 seconds from my colleague, Ava Warner at Middle East Eye, about the confluence between these Emirati propagandists and Israeli ones.
Are UAE-based influencers targeting Sudan online?
والله العظيم لو بيدي أنا حرام لا أخليكم ذكريات والله.
Basically saying, if it were up to me, I would turn Sudan into a memory.
ولا هيروشيما بنفضكم.
Like Hiroshima.
Another sang taunting Sudanese civilians.
أبو لولو أبو لولو جاينكو أبو لولو
Abu Lulu is coming for you.
جاينكو.
Abu Lulu, the RSF militia commander who bragged about killing over 2,000 civilians and filmed himself executing them. And a third.
بتبكون دم دم أنتم أطولون.
You will weep blood, blood. You who do not respect Mohammed bin Zayed, you know, the head honcho of the UAE.
شعره من محمد بن زايد شعره مطولونها.
As evidence of the RSF's massacres in Al Fasher emerges and UAE support for the paramilitary group continues, these influencers and seemingly bots have tried to shift the blame to the Sudanese army and away from the RSF war crimes. And some of these posts are extremely racist. One even replied to a post about the UAE exploiting Sudan's gold, saying monkeys don't have gold. One of the most vocal in this online campaign is Amjad Taha. He's UAE based, positions himself as an analyst, and frequently appears on Western media. He has consistently linked Sudan's army to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, framing the Sudanese armed forces as the Hamas of Africa. This week, he shared images of two families, one an Israeli family, the other a Sudanese family, claiming both were victims of Muslim Brotherhood-led forces. In reality, Middle East Eye could not find any evidence that the Sudanese family was killed by the army. Following Taha, other Emirati and UAE-based influencers piled on, sharing Taha's video and calling the Sudanese army the Hamas of Africa. Then on Thursday, two other Emiratis posted nearly identical statements condemning Iran's reaction to the UAE's role in Sudan, defending both the UAE and Israel, suggesting a coordinated effort. And it's not just Emiratis. Israeli accounts were also quick to chime in, having spent a long time pointing to Sudan to deflect attention away from Israel's own actions in Gaza. Far-right Israeli influencer Avi Yemeni posted that Christians in Sudan and Nigeria are being slaughtered by jihadists, a genuine genocide. But because it doesn't fit the narrative, almost nobody cares.
Yeah, so basically I just wanted to play 90 seconds of that. I think it's pretty good and it's pretty demonstrative that, you know, when interests align, your state-sponsored bots and your state-sponsored propagandists will kind of ally. And I think there's no better demonstration of that with the renewed interest in Sudan and the messaging surrounding that.
Wow. I would say like my first comments off the the term a genuine genocide, the continued use of other conflicts around the world to make any sort of pro-Palestinian support look inauthentic is a strategy I see is still holding strong. But I'm sure people to this day, right now, people are very much woke to it. It is completely possible to be both pro-Palestinian and aware of the ongoing conflicts across the world. I don't think anybody really truly feels they have to pick one or the other. But there definitely has to be some sort of ideological alliance with what you are supporting, some more moralic consistency. But in terms of, you didn't ask the question, but I just had to comment on that.
No, because it's like they're not talking. They're talking about scope, not about the actual action that's happening. Oh, it's like, you need to have some like abstract number to actually make it a genocide. And also when these Hezbollists are talking about like Sudan, they're still going off the 60,000 killed in Gaza number. It's definitely more, when Trump says there's now 1.7 million people left in Gaza, he's getting that from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That's U.S. intelligence advising him of, 500,000 people are missing from our figures. So that's kind of how I read that as well. But yes, there has been an obsession, especially in the West, with, that is a genocide, because that's just kind of this like real colonial attitude too, that's still like infected newsrooms and academic institutions throughout the West. Is like, Africa's where genocides happen, it can't happen, in the world's, the Middle East's only democracy, but like Africa, like that's a real one. And that comes back hundreds of years. So
it always seems to happen in areas where we have a clear link to Israel as well. RSF being backed by Israel, the Rwandan MS-13, as much as Kagame doesn't want to claim that MS-13 is Rwandan, they are.
Sri Lanka.
But we have Sri Lanka, but also in terms of weapon transfers as well, the fact that MS-13 members have some of the newest of terms of Israeli weaponry. Why is that? But you could get really deep into the economics of it. I'm probably jumping the gun here when I mention the Congo here, but one of the richest billionaires in the Congo isn't a Congolese person; it's an Israeli. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about resource extraction and who benefits from that, it just seems like a clear link right back to the empire itself. UAE is UAE and Saudi Arabia are Israel's largest allies within the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And their decisions have consequences across the global South.
Right, and so I guess there were a lot of people are coming into this pretty new, and I know we definitely want to talk about the concept of like Pan-Africanism, but I think like where would you like to start with like Sudan and then expand into Congo? Because I think like one of the great binding themes in what it's always been about is resource extraction.
Yeah, I think resource extraction is probably just a great way to start. And I hope it doesn't seem like minimization to people when I focus on that aspect. I think a common problem I see when it comes to discussions about Africa is the need to constantly add like a little bit of hyperbole to the amount of cultures and tribes within Africa. Or there's over 400 tribes within Sudan. There's over 1,000 tribes within Congo, which is all completely important, very much correct. But I still do feel that there is an inherent obfuscation of what is actually important when you mention these, that despite there being multiple different tribes who may have like very minor differences, they can all align through shared oppression, which is colonialism and the damage to resource extraction that's happening within the area. So when I do focus on why there are conflicts in Sudan, and I'm not just focusing on the ethnic tensions that are being exploited in order to gain these resource extractions, that doesn't mean I'm ignoring those ethnic tensions. I'm saying that those are only rising to the point of military conflict in order to create that opportunity for imperialist powers. Because what does it take for one ethnic group to hate another to a point of just a military conflict? It's incentive from an outside force because they've still been living in peace for centuries. It's not it's you know, we can what's a good equivalent in America? You know, how often we hate each other because of sports teams. You know, like what would bring a Packers fan to start getting into like hand to hand, like a fisticuffs or with the Dallas Cowboys. You know, maybe there was like an incentive, a bigger prize, like a material incentive. But yeah, outside of that, so in terms of what's going on in South Sudan, the gold and oil reserves are some of the largest within the world. Africa is plentiful when it comes to resources, everybody knows. And why does this seem to be an ongoing conversation? People seem to hear about the resource extraction of Africa. Why haven't we done anything? The IMF and the World Bank have done some things. Sure, there's perimeters saying that it is illegal to directly, participate in anything, any blood diamond culture within Africa. But places like UAE or Saudi Arabia circumvent this by not doing any direct extraction themselves. They'll fund groups like the RSF, for example, who take control. They can take control of these mining areas, and interested investors from the UAE, for example, will make deals or contracts with RSF members that bring that gold to the UAE, not through official diplomatic lines. And when sold to other countries, the gold can be said to be sourced from the UAE or Saudi Arabia. So that's how they're able to kind of circumvent those national laws. And this framework can be extrapolated to what's happening across the continent. The Congo, Madagascar, and Burkina Faso is a great example of people resisting that form of neocolonialism and really pushing for national sovereignty within their nation. And nationalist. Wait, there's two different definitions of nationalism. I feel like I may use the word nationalism a lot here. So there's two definitions of nationalism, and one is more good than the other. And I'm talking about the good one in terms of resisting tools of oppression, and having a say on what your research can do in order to uplift your people. I hope that was a good framework for people. How do we do there, guys? I tried to make that as simple as possible.
No, it's fine.
I've been in it for so long. I'm like, wait, what do people not know?
Right.
No,
I think that's a pretty good intro. Also, like, again, we say that like the Saudis are, bad and they're the worst in the region, but like, because they use third parties, they use artisanal mining and smuggling operations, and they have like a loopholes for like when you get the gold into Dubai and it's melted down and mixed with all the other gold, it's no longer like a conflict resource anymore. But it's not
traceable. You can't find out what region it comes from because of the chemical makeup and the
right.
impurity.
But like
exactly
again, I still, this all comes back to the United States as well, because in the military industrial complex as well, because in terms of like resource extraction, it might look different than Boeing or Raytheon or like Tesla, like black bag smuggling 3TG minerals out of the Congo or like Sudan or wherever else. But we have things like this. And I don't want to take up too much time with this, but it's pretty instructive. This is a specialized disclosure report. Any company involved in quote unquote conflict regions like the DRC, conflict regions as described by the Security and Exchange Commissions, has to file one of these specialized disclosure reports. And this is the Boeing Company Conflict Minerals Report. So we got overview, commercial airlines, space. Okay, so here is the main disclaimer. 3TG in our projects. 3TGs are tin, tungsten, and how am I mind blanking on the third T? But anyways, rare earths, right? Our products, quoting from their disclosure report, our products are highly complex, containing thousands of parts from thousands of direct and indirect suppliers through the world. Typically, multiple tiers exist between the tin, tantalum, and tungsten. and gold, 3TG. So mines and our direct suppliers. Therefore, we rely on our direct suppliers to work with their suppliers in order to provide us with accurate information about the origin of 3TG and the materials, components, and parts and subassemblies we purchase. Since 2013, we have required new supplier contracts and renewals of existing supplier contracts to provide us with the 3TG information necessary to conduct our due diligence. So basically, I wanted to read out that because there's no accountability whatsoever. And this goes for Tesla, who also files these. This goes for SpaceX, who also files these. Their conflict minerals policy, you can just read through it. It's absolutely absurd. Like, they have entire sections of due diligence, but it's completely insane. So it looks, like the extraction itself with like Glencore and these other, contractors looks different from how the Saudis and the Emiratis do it, because they don't have the same like regulations. But yes, us and our comprador states in the Gulf have been plundering this region for a long time.
And also, that was awesome, Greg. Something that just came to mind that I also want to just let people know that the framing of a lot of African conflicts as if that seems very similar to like Israel Palestine, as if, oh, this has always happened. There's always been a battle there. We can't do anything about it. It's part of the culture, as if violence is just native to the region. No, especially in Africa, we have to remember what Sudan was, especially from the eras after colonialism. Sudan had one of the first socialist governments in Africa right after its independence from 1969 to 1985, electing one of the first female prime ministers within the African continent itself. And what happened to our government? It's that's a tale as old as time. The largest capitalist superpower in the world could not have that. The idea of liberation and freedom sounds great in an abstract concept, but when oppressed people actually try to economically pursue that, the big boy United States definitely has to find some way to make sure that fails. So when Sudan socialists, what we see today is the outcome of what destroying a socialist movement and allowing a government that benefits the global north. Sudan was not always like this. The people do want self-determination. History has shown that. And Burkina Faso, I'll shouts at the Ibrahim. Burkina Faso and the whole Sahel region continue to be a great example to the continent of still being able to resist these powers, and that there is still hope, especially in places like Madagascar, where they just had a successful revolution. I know people may say it's a color revolution. I feel like that word is that's a fair fear. I think that word is being slightly overused lately. But the fact that the French-backed prime minister was the one that actually fled the nation, I don't believe Madagascar is a color revolution, and it's just one of the many examples showing that Burkina Faso is really inspiring the continent right now. And I'd say more than any other time in history, I have a positive view of Africa's future.
Yeah, same. I do too. I've always said for years that Africa will rise and it will kick out the cancer of Western imperialism. I've been saying that for 10 years. People thought I was like being overly optimistic, but the thing about it is you cannot oppress Africa more than in what it's already been oppressed. So it gets to the point where the people know that there's nothing else to lose but going up as far as revolution is concerned. But I had a question about like going back to Sudan, right? I posed this question to you earlier this morning, and based on like just like pattern recognition and what I'm seeing as far as the separation of culpability with the Sudanese government, like the way it's been simplified in the Western media is that you have this Sudanese government is fighting the RSF, right? And the RSF, as we know, is backed by the UAE and by proxy, basically the United States. Greg is going to get more into detail about Eric Prince's involvement in kind of seeding these these mercenaries and arming the RSF and training them with technology as far as advanced drone warfare and whatnot and weaponry. But my problem with the Sudanese government, it appears like, yeah, they're putting up a fight, but it doesn't appear like they're putting up that great of a fight. And if I were a betting man, I would say that the Sudanese government is doing just enough to make it appear as if there's some pushback against the RSF and its actions, when in fact, we know that both sides can be bribed, both sides can be bought, but you can't just have a genocide and ethnic cleansing without a perceived pushback from government officials. So the Sudanese government does a little bit of pushback, but ultimately the end game is that area is cleansed completely of any indigenous peoples so that the wealth can be extracted. After that area has been secured by the RSF, now it's a ceasefire between the two parties. I pose that question to you. What is your take on that? Just so the audience can hear your take on it.
I would say I largely agree with your analysis. And again, not to minimize it to those listening, it's no different to what Marx says, that not even capitalists are really aligned. They're more of like a roving band of brothers. I would agree that the Sudanese armed forces and the RSF do very much have very similar material interests in terms of benefiting their capitalist investors and partners. I would assume, I would say it's a correct assumption that, yeah, they have largely same material interests, very similar backers. If I had to be positive towards the Sudanese government, I very much do believe that they do have much more of a more nationalist slant than the RSF, and they have much greater validity to claim that that what they're fighting for is definitely for the continuation of the nationalist project. But yeah, I would say I would largely agree with your analysis that this conflict seems nothing more than a way to continue to test weapons, create a controlled instability within the region in order to continue resource extraction, because the Sudanese government doesn't offer anything that's material uplift of the actual country. It's not a socialist project. It's not a people's project.
Right. And, even like neoliberal think tanks out of Europe would definitely agree with that. I was just reading The Role of Gold in the Sudanese War by the Italian Institute for International Political Studies, which is like a bigger international think tank. But they rightly comment that, while a range of natural resources, including land, livestock, minerals, and gum, are entangled in the dynamics of Sudan's war, gold stands out as a particularly critical asset. High value, portability, and role in financing both local armed actors and external sponsors make it central to sustaining and shaping the current conflict. And of course, it's not just the UAE that is interested in Sudan's gold. It's also Russia. That's why the Wagner Group was at first, before Russia switched sides, essentially, and started supporting the SAF. They were the ones training the RSF because, part of this whole move to get away from the petrodollar is you need something to back your reserves. And getting away from the petrodollar means like a lot of people who want a more multipolar world want more gold. Even if that's not ultimately what ends up backing a non-US petrodollar reserve. But yeah, so like Sudan is also kind of like a serious situation insofar as like every regional and global actor is literally involved in this shit. So it's actually kind of depressing, but I'd say the main people driving this are UAE and then the US Israeli interests as well.
Could we go into now the US's role of Sudan? Eric Prince is essentially the Wagner Group of the United States in many ways. For those of you who don't know, Eric Prince was the founder of Blackwater, which was known for its war crimes in Iraq. I think they changed the name. I keep forgetting their new name. I always forget.
Well, basically they went from Blackwater, then you had the Nasser Square massacre, then they went to Z, then they did something else, and then they had to rebrand to Academy, and now I think they're still Academy. So yeah, basically, the U.S. definitely allows the defense establishment allows Eric Prince to run around the world doing whatever, even if it creates instability. He is known commonly as the mercenary captain of Dubai. He is responsible for funneling Colombian special forces veterans into Dubai. So, at first they were fighting in Yemen, and now they're in Sudan. So basically, one of the reasons that they tap Colombian ex-special forces is because they're trained by Washington. They've been fighting FARC and other militias in the jungle, and they don't really have good military pensions or like even retirement options. So a lot of these Colombian guys, Washington trained, go to Dubai, sometimes Ukraine recently, and then they end up in Sudan. So, there is definitely a demonstrable and well-known pipeline between Washington training proxies in Colombia to then be shipped over to the UAE to act as proxies of imperial interests in Africa and other regions as well. Like Colombian mercenaries are what we use. Like they're in Haiti right now. They're like all over the place. And again, they were trained by Green Berets in Colombia.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, like fingerprints are all over it.
And Green Berets, their specialty is training guerrillas, training their as opposed to say your other elite groups like Navy SEALs or Marine, MARSOC, whatever. Green Berets specialty is basically force multiplication. You take a highly trained Green Beret, you drop them in with some inexperienced militiamen, you get them trained up, you teach them tactics so that they then can then train others. So it's a force multiplication of training essentially.
Yeah, but I will say in Colombia, it's completely institutionalized. It's not some drop them behind the lines and let's see. No, it's like a pipeline, and they know that an inordinate, like even the Pedro had to make a comment about Colombian mercenaries all over the globe. But anyways, I don't want to go on a whole mercenary tangent, but like this is
mercenaries are this is key. No, mercenaries are a key. Like
that is the tangent.
Mercenaries in Africa never happened before. So I mean, like this is a great demonstration of the dynamics of U.S. imperialism as well. Because why does Russia use the Wagner Group? They're notorious for just like war crimes and stuff like that. They're like also horrible, and they actually put out an ad. One of their recon units put out an ad because they produced their own like Nazi pre-workout that was just covered in runes and stuff. Anyways, these mercenary groups they're soldiers of fortune. They're not like good dudes. So governments send them in order to do work that they need a degree of separation from. Right?
Yeah, it's great for obfuscation.
Honestly, if you're in the game, you know exactly what's going on. However, there's not the same legal ramifications, and also you don't have to protect your guys. They have plausible deniability, unlike uniformed soldiers. That's just international law in the post-World War II Geneva Convention era. So that's why like everybody knows at the start of this war, Wagner Group was like totally behind the RSF before they flipped, and now the Colombians are in there with the UAE backing, and they're doing this because everyone knows what's happening, but what are the legal mechanisms in which to like rein this in? They don't really exist. And if they didn't exist before, in the post Gaza moment where we just had the state-sponsored campaign of bombing hospitals, how actually do you enforce any of this? Like the UAE is basically just doing what Israel is doing, giving a big middle finger to everybody, even though we all know what they're doing. So that's another question. And that's always kind of like been like the tragedy of Africa too, in general.
Definitely, PMCs definitely play a part in terms of the ongoing conflict. Like exactly what you said. PMCs offer like in a world where mass media has never been larger in human history, PMCs offer plausible deniability, the avoidance of political backlash, and when and when it definitely comes to a lot of these fabricated conflicts, PMCs can use those as essentially training grounds for their people. And the framework of PMCs, while I was kind of saying that that's pretty much the future of pretty much not just Africa but the global South in general, is it's because when you understand imperialism as the final stage of capitalism, and you understand that a lot of these billionaires and conglomerates can rise higher than even heads of state, PMCs acts as a way of maintaining, claiming, or protecting independent economic interests across the world without their own formalized standard military group or standard army. And I say I fear, but I think it's clear when you look at the economics of it that PMCs are on the rise, and they're joining those, like I said, they're joining those roving band of brothers. We see Blackwater expansion of their capitalist interest by investing into real estate. If you can't, if you can't continue to, if you're, you always have to make more and more money every year in your quarterly. So what's the easiest way to add more revenue to your fund? Have land. And I fear that this may extend internationally here very soon. But there's also the failure of using PMCs to stop these conflicts. I think it was pretty recently that the president of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, by the way, yeah, I'm Congolese, tried to hire Eastern European mercenaries in order to stop MS-13. And when you try to hire a bunch of men who aren't from the country, what are you going to do in their first sign of a loss? They're going to surrender. So that's exactly what happened. Yeah, so Chixadeli, if you're ever listening to this, I don't know if you will, please just pay the military. I think they're still getting paid like $1.25 an hour, which is why they won't fight. Yeah.
Can we expand on the Congo now? I want to get into the Congo,
please.
As you touched on it. Let's. That's kind of like the icing on this cake as far as content. When it the Congo. Yeah,
one thing about African leaders and leaders in West Asia employing Europeans, they're not employing like the cream of the crop. It's kind of like a status symbol. How like the Byzantine emperor would like employ a couple like Vikings, in his Varangian guard. It's like a status symbol. And like a lot of these guys, like from the French Foreign Legion, they're idiots. They don't really know what to do anyway. They're just running around the world because like a lot of these merc recruiting companies, especially the sketchy ones, don't really have the highest threshold or like of vetting processes either. So
I heard the basic training. Yeah. I heard the basic training for the French Foreign Legion is basically like almost subpar with like your standard army training at Fort Benning.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyways, just pay your guys. Stop going for like the colonial status symbol,
That's so funny. So you watch so many American military movies, you're like, I gotta get those guys. Like
yeah.
I'm getting 6. I'm getting Splinter Cell.
That's so true.
That's so funny.
Hollywood plays a role in all this, believe it or not.
The greatest propaganda machine, not just like American history, but human history. Like when you talk about like our greatest weapon is truly our cultural power. Like I think America, like I don't think there's hasn't been anything like Americans' culture's pervasiveness across the world. And I can't think of an example in any point in time. Maybe Rome, but yeah.
The Black Hawk Down, all those romanticized war movies, they have the impact on all your warlords across the world, thinking that, I gotta get one of those guys, one of those little grunts.
And then maybe you want to like run away from home at 18 and be like, I saw Black Hawk Down. I'm gonna go into Ranger Regiment. Whoops.
Yeah, he might be one of those dumbasses, and then they might start a podcast with an E4 grunt.
Yeah. So. Anyways, yeah, let's
Congo. Sorry.
Yeah, Congo.
Yeah, give us where to start with the Congo. Congo. Let me see. I'm trying. I don't want to be too redundant for people. I feel like if you're at this point that you're listening to Colonial Outcasts, you have some of the basics down with the Congo, colonized by the Belgians at the time. The number one resource was rubber, not necessarily cobalt or the tungsten. That's very popular today. People talk about their iPhones, computers, a lot of electronic hardware comes from materials researched for the Congo. By the time that was rubber, and up until its independence. What did the Belgians do to the Congo? We referred to the arms quota. If they didn't build certain tracks fast enough or didn't extract resources fast enough, you'd lose an arm. But I hear a lot of, pro-colonialism takes from the right side that the Belgians did, building trains. Some of the ways they did build the train tracks was bad, was horrendous, but it was infrastructure building. Congo became better than it was before. I push against that by saying by the time of Congo's independence, of a population of 13 million people, there were only 12 people who had anything larger than a secondary education. So when they talk about true upliftment of its people, Belgium did none of that. And this is a pretty common thread throughout African colonialism. There was no interest in terms of uplifting its people. It was pure resource extraction. And if they had to navigate, some levels of international, what's the word I'm looking for? Because think about it today, you can't necessarily just send a whole standing army to acquire resources in Africa today. It's just not a good look. So you do use new avenues like the IMF and the World Bank to create SAP's standard. What does SAP stand for again? Structural adjustment programs. For those that don't know what a structural adjustment program is, for example, if the Congo wanted a loan to build a school, for example, or build some roads, they would go to a World Bank and IMF to ask for this loan. The IMF may say yes, but you must, for example, only if you give this loan, you have to stop funding your education and your welfare program. You have to only buy corn from a French company or this specific American company. So what happens to those farmers? Corn is probably not the best example, but if some sort of resource, if you want a resource, you have to buy it from this specific company from this specific country, which harms the actual local production within the area. These structural adjustment programs are pretty much the standard within the IMF and World Bank for many African countries, and they only stopped becoming the standard within a lot of loan programs in Africa once the Belt and Road Initiative in China became a thing. Which is why to this day America has been pushing super hard this idea that the Belt and Road Initiative of China is some sort of like neo-colonialism. No, it's the actual first breath of fresh air. They forgive all the loans. But back to just focusing singly on the Congo. What is happening today is essentially the Congo has a huge border. It's a huge country. It covers the entire almost. If you look at a map of Africa, the Congo pretty much is right smack in the middle. It's called the heart of Africa, and within that border there are a huge amount of resources. And what we're seeing with the MS-13 that is creating conflict without the eastern side is essentially Rwanda's. We were talking about PMCs being covered for nation states, and the MS-13 is that for Rwanda.
Wait, are we talking about M20? Wait, MS-13 or M23?
M23. Oh my god!
I get them, dude.
Oh my god! Oh my god! How long have I been saying MS-13?
MS-13 is the boogeyman that's underneath MacArthur Park in Los Angeles that they had to say.
How long have I been saying?
No, MS-13 has tunnels underneath MacArthur Park. Let's not confuse it.
That's why we need to invade the Congo to stop the fentanyl trafficking into America. MS-13 in Congo must go down.
Oh my god, that's so funny. Oh, that's crazy. I was like, why do you guys look at me weird? I'm like, why am I saying MS-13? I don't mean Microsoft. Now I'm playing. No, so MS-23.
It's been a long month, man. It's okay, bro. It's been a long fucking month for all three of us.
So this rebel group funded by Rwanda is Rwanda's because Rwanda is one of the biggest exporters of tungsten, tin, tantalum, and almost cobalt within Africa, and they export to places like Israel and USA. But Rwanda doesn't have any of these resources naturally, so they acquired. So where do they get them from? Well, they acquired from the Congo through their military proxies, the MS-23, and even more than resources, because of the conflict within the eastern side. Congo is known for the silverback gorilla. Now there's no access to the silverback gorilla by the recognized government. But what did Rwanda just recently reveal through their tourism industry? Hey guys, come to Rwanda to see the silverback gorillas. Like actually so blatant. You know, Kagame can go all day saying like, "Oh, these rebels are Rwandan, they are Rwandan," but then they just do these blatant tactics. I'm like, if people fly to Rwanda, are they just gonna ignore the fact that they're going across Congolese land? Like, oh, don't mind this part of the tour. It's insane. And how do we even come to the situation? Multiple factors. Rwanda gets some of the largest amount of federal aid across the multiple countries in the global north. They get I'm blanking on the number. They get a huge amount of aid from the USA. And it's assumed, especially with there is, like I mentioned before, the Israeli grade weapons that there is material and capitalist interest in order to grab these resources without dealing with the recognized Congolese government. Or just another avenue for some capitalists who don't align with their bigger brothers. What's the point that I wanted to say? How do we even? Oh yeah, because largely a lot of these borders that are happening that are part of Africa was an agreement within the African Union. When after colonial independence happened, it was widely agreed by all African nations that they were going to keep the borders that existed in order not to exacerbate any tensions. We're going to work within the European borders that were created. And to this day, Rwanda is not happy about that. There is no legalized way for Rwanda to expand its borders, so it does it through proxies in order to acquire the resources that the desire. Hope I condensed that well enough, guys.
Yeah, I mean it's just like the UAE is one of it's probably is the biggest exporter of gold with no natural gold mines, with zero loads. Huh. Weird.
Well, how did MS-13 like come about? Because
no, go ahead.
No,
you fucked that up.
Did I say MS-13? MS-23, dude. I did.
Oh my God.
Damn it. We got. Sorry, I got MacArthur Park on my mind. They're down there. The MS-23. What was their genesis in relation to the Rwandan genocide? I know that they played a hand. Like the Rwandan genocide was, they were armed by the Israelis. They had a huge hand in that. So no doubt there's like that connection. You got Dan Gertler's connection with the Congolese the mining operations.
Wait, sorry. Before M23, I'm like
M23.
M23. We're like I keep like not M23. Fives are together, guys. We got this, boys. We understand
right,
we know our terrorists. God damn it!
Tomorrow's Friday, baby. Let's go.
It's not Friday yet. Let's
Outcast.
On Thursday, y'all. We gotta get these acronyms right. All right, M23, the genesis of M23, starting in Rwanda. So they've, from what I've read, the Western interests saw the potential in this group in relation to what happened out of Rwanda. They said, they were pretty efficient with that genocide. Maybe they can be efficient in clearing the way for mineral extraction in the Congo. So where did that start? Like, what was the beginning stages of that with M23?
Let me try to understand the question. You're asking, what's the initial push for an armed conflict decision for the resource extraction versus like something diplomatic?
Well,
that the
like what was like when was M23 tapped for the essentially the I guess the genocide of the Congo? Like they were tapped for that purposely by Western influence in order to pave the way for a very efficient, resource extraction through like, slave labor in the Congo, killing as many indigenous Congolese as they can so that there would be the least resistance for extraction. So Dan Gertler, the Israeli billionaire, diamond baron, he's maintaining his wealth through that extraction. So no doubt he has his hands in that. So Rwanda is essentially like that proxy. It served as that proxy on the heels of the Rwandan genocide. So I guess my question is like the dynamics there. Those relationships were formed at some point between Western powers. I mean, Israel giving the weapons for the genocide in Rwanda was, if I were to guess, that was like the beginning stages of that relationship, right?
Yeah. Oh, no. Okay. Definitely. Okay. I see what you're getting at. I'd say no different from Zionists getting appeals from larger Western powers in order to fund the Israel project. The resurgent, the Tutsi community within Rwanda saw something largely the same with their own international allies. The Tutsis had much larger, people within the Tutsi community within Rwanda had much larger economic ties with a lot of European Western powers, and they were able to benefit from that to get funding for their own self-establishment or control within the government. And these tribal conflicts are, don't always have these static borders. There's people within M23 itself that are Congolese, and there's Rwandan citizens within the Congolese government itself. Tribal groups mix all the time. There are Tutsis within the Congo, so being able to use that existing Tutsi community and the conflicts within the state in order to not only grab control but also get legitimacy within attacking the Congo, for example. Because what Kagame can also say is that he is trying to protect the Tutsi community within the Congo, no different than Israel saying they're going to protect the the community in Syria, the Jewish community in Syria,
Druze,
the Druze, the Druze, yeah. It's the same. I hope this doesn't seem like minimizing people, but I would say it's the exact same framework that Kagame feels will publicly say that he feels as if he's protecting the ethnic Tutsi community when it comes to any bold-faced attitudes against the Congo. So I would say that's how it initially started. See it as very similar framework to the Zionist right, or maybe not as clear-cut as the Balfour Agreement, but close.
Yeah, and you still have the same thing about the UN's High Commissioner, especially for for human rights, calling these things out. Because M23 rebels, as they're described, rebels killed at least 320 civilians, including 48 women and 19 children, just this past July, as was documented by the UN. But of course, nothing's really going to happen.
So let's talk.
Nothing. I was going to say, I mentioned again, there's Congolese and Rwandans who trade citizens all the time. I wanted to mention that because there's a common refrain that I hear that, M23 is actually Congolese. I'm just like, it's from what framework are you coming with that accusation? Are you trying to dissuade people from the Congolese having a nationalized control over their resources by saying like, this is just a Congolese thing? Or are we actually going to question why there are so many self-identifying Congolese Rwandans work together within M23, and what country are they getting funded by at the end of the day? because we're, you know, like you could call yourself Congolese at, you know, at any point in time, or are you doing something to push the actual, you know, Congolese independence from oppression? Yeah, it's just it's a funny thing that I'm seeing increasingly being said. M23 is Congolese. I'm like, what? Come on now. Like you can't even fly to Goma anymore. People don't know Goma is honestly, I think that's the best city in the Congo. It's in the east side. Kinshasa is the capital, but Goma is personally the best. They speak Swahili there, and it was a popular destination. But it's occupied right now. Why would fellow Congolese do that? It's crazy.
Yeah.
Let's now shift towards Burkina Faso. So this is kind of like, I guess, the optimism portion of the episode, because as you know, after Traoré was able to successfully, you know, consolidate power, nationalized the state resources, kicked out the French, multiple assassination attempts. Where are we standing now? Like, how has that expanded in revolutionary fervor across the Sahel region?
Well, we could just go down the list of what it's accomplished. In the Burkina Faso not only has like its own, I think they're opening their third tomato processing plant. They opened the first fully African-owned EV company, one of the first fully owned African textile companies. So Burkinians are wearing clothes from their own country. We are seeing a rise of Pan-Africanist movements with the Alliance of Sahel states, with Mali and Niger. We're seeing the weakening of AFRICOM as every other nation looks at Burkina Faso and Ibrahim as an example for everybody.
Real quick, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but just for people, because AFRICOM is Africa Command. Everyone knows about CENTCOM, which is the U.S. Military Central Command, which goes from Egypt to India across Pakistan. So AFRICOM is Africa Command. And Molombo is absolutely correct. We've had to shut down bases, Agadez Air Base. We've had to shut down all military operations in Niger. Yeah, and it's going to happen in Chad, all over the place through the Sahel. Yeah, so sorry.
No, Langley.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Hit me.
I was going to hit you with the Michael Langley. So I don't, if y'all aren't aware, I wish I could pull up the video. By the way, it's really hard to pull up the video of Michael Langley trying to manufacture consent for an invasion of the Sahel. So after Burkina Faso, after Traoré kicked out the French, the U.S. knew that this was a powder keg ready to go off, a revolutionary powder keg ready to go off. So he stood up and tried to, I guess, frame the situation in Burkina Faso as this dire crisis of a hotbed for terrorism. And we have to, and the U.S. Armed Forces may need to step in to secure that region because, you know, the Pentagon cares so much about the security and safety of Africans. So he felt so compelled to come up. And it obviously had the opposite effect when he said that. It wound up galvanizing revolutionary fervor across the Sahel region. And surprisingly, amongst Americans, including right-wingers, I saw a deluge of posts by right-wingers in the United States who were calling out Michael Langley for trying to manufacture intervention. So what's interesting about what Traoré has done, besides signaling to fellow Africans that now is the time that we start owning our own land, owning our resources, it also created a fervor amongst Americans who normally are not. They don't really care about geopolitics. They don't care about liberation of other peoples, but they saw something in Traoré that they want for themselves here in the United States. We want sovereignty for our own future and our own resources, given the fact that 3 of the biggest companies are now just buying up everything in the United States. They saw something. Even people who maybe they're racist, even racists were seeing something in Traoré. And so it had that opposite effect. And I was just wondering if you could speak on that and what you've been seeing. You're plugged in a lot more than I am to revolutionary thought of Pan-Africanism. And I just want to hear what's brewing. What's brewing right now?
So real quick, again, sorry, again,
Good.
not a lot of people know about Burkina Faso. So when Michael Langley, the Marine general in charge of AFRICOM, said
4-star general.
What? 4-star general.
4-star general. Yeah.
Who was in charge of Africa operations. He said Burkina Faso was this hotbed of terrorism, and in Burkina Faso and Chad and Niger, there's an organization of Wahhabi assholes called Boko Haram, and they have since pledged themselves like their allegiance to the Islamic State, ISIS, ISIS in the Sahel, and they're basically ostensibly justifying like the Wagner group being in Mali, also U.S. intervention throughout the Sahel because of this one organization that's, again, allied to the Islamic State. So when they say hotbed of terrorism, that is one of the primary militias that he is referring to. Of course, the U.S. relationship with al-Qaeda and the Islamic State is a little bit kind of problematic. I just wanted to lay that out there, that what he was referring to are groups like Boko Haram and the Islamic State that do exist throughout the Sahel region, and they are a problem.
Fantastic explanation, really. Also, I don't think it was said. Ibrahim Traore, friend of the show. Something you touched upon, Mark. In terms of Americans being from both sides of the aisle, being really supporting what's happening in Burkina Faso and what Ibrahim is doing. From the right wing perspective, I think Burkina Faso touches upon like of a lot of things that they inherently want. It plays on bootstrap mentality, the fact that Africans should solve African problems. Why are we there? That's what they're doing. The idea of, like you said, American first mentality that I think has also become something of a bipartisan phenomenon, especially when it comes to the situation in Israel. That why are we so involved in these foreign conflicts when the contradictions are continuing to rise in America day after day. So it's a lot harder to sell to the current American cultural zeitgeist that we should have any say in these other countries when we have problems of our own. And what Ibrahim is showing, like you said, in terms of what is actually possible when you just focus on improving the material conditions of your people back you. And also shows just how much, no matter how much a people's oppressed, they understand their material situations enough to understand what side to support. It's in the same way Traore is economically is. Let's see. Well, how am I trying to word this? Being Burkina Faso being such a small nation itself, you look at a map, look at the size of Burkina Faso, and it being able to accomplish so much with the vigor of its people is an inspiration to people, those within America, of what is truly possible within our own nation as well. So in terms of what Ibrahim has been able to achieve, like I mentioned, rising EV, tomato processing, textiles, kicking out the French military, that's a big one. Free education for free basic education, free housing, and my favorite part, normalizing the Pan-African conversation. For those that don't know what Pan-Africanism is the idea that despite our many differences, many different tribes and whatnot, all African nations have a common link through colonialism and oppression, and that the only way for there to be a free Africa is a united Africa under the doctrine of scientific socialism. That scientific socialism part gets cut out a lot, but Pan-Africanism its origins come from Marxist-Leninist thought. But I always like to make sure to tell people that Pan-Africanism is a goal. It is a goal, but the ideology, the political ideology, I would say I'm a Nkrumah terrorist. Sankara is actually well. And Nkrumah was also, I would say, it was a Marxist-Leninist, but he was very well read. with Marx Lenin. But what became Nkrumah, when it became becoming a Nkrumahist, meant what you employing the Marx-Leninist thought within the material conditions of Africa. And something that doesn't really jive is Marx's conclusions around spirituality within the advancement of socialism. Spirituality is incredibly important within the continent. Africans are incredibly spiritual. You see that within the diaspora itself, in the Caribbean, African American, and Afro Latino communities as well. So being able to coincide that spirituality with Marx-Leninist thought is how we get to. I'm definitely minimizing this a lot, but it's how we eventually arrive to Nkrumah's thought, Tourette's thought, and Sankara's thought to overall the Pan-African movement. And you see a lot of the most successful socialist governments, movements, and communist movements within Africa all had that Pan-African veneer. And even though Abraham has not publicly stated that he is a socialist, he did study Marx in school, but he does seem to put a lot of socialists and communists within his cabinet and people surrounding him, even though he hasn't personally called himself a socialist. It is very gratifying for many who hope for better for Africa, that he is continuing to push this Pan-African thought, pushing for pushing to work with other African nations, pushing the alliances of Sahel states, the elimination of borders, more intercontinental trade, which is huge. Just to let people know, you could be born in the Congo, you still need a visa to go to South Africa. It's easier to travel Africa with an American passport than it is being an actual African. That's insane. It inherently creates friction. It inherently creates opposition. So seeing Ibrahim not only pushing Pan-Africanism, but him being so well loved and well received by everybody within the continent is truly, it is truly one of the most positive things to come about. It's inspiring countries. Like I said, I think it's not just be Madagascar. This is going to continue to happen. People are tired.
And it's put the spotlight on other African leaders, like in Mali. You know, it's kind of like it poses the question, it forces the people to ask the question of their leaders, like, okay, he did that, can you do that? So I'm no doubt they probably don't like that spotlight, but they can't just ignore it. So they're going to have to at least do platitudes for their people, you know. But you know,
just cue in the Gulf states. You know, this is why they hate Palestinian resistance, because like their people are like, huh? Oh,
yeah,
what's up?
I mean, no, exactly. No, 100%. The oh, by the way, France is suspected, at least according to Africa Stream, of arming Boko Haram. So it hasn't been proven. There hasn't been direct evidence, but there is a lot of.
So sorry. Speaking of Boko Haram, my favorite Ibrahim quote was the fact that this is the way he framed it was, this isn't terrorism. This is imperialism. The goal of these terrorist groups is to make sure we're so military distracted that we can't continue our project of uplifting our people. That was just so beautiful. I'm like,
yeah,
man,
Traore has made it very clear.
He gets it.
Yeah.
Like if you search any Western sources, media sources, they will shy away completely from any suspicion that Boko Haram is being financed by a Western force. You speak to Traore, he will tell you straight to your face, France is financing Boko Haram. Now, okay, obviously you're not going to see evidence of that, because who's going to leave a paper trail? Who's going to leave a check from the minister of France to it's not going to happen. It's going to be, there's so many complex ways of financing a terrorist group.
Well, we've already established that France like whoopsied some machine guns to al-Nusra in Syria back in the day. So it's not like completely rogue behavior in terms of a foreign policy.
And there's suspicion that the fall of Libya, among the obvious of removing Gaddafi, who was considering creating a unified Africa, there's also the suspicion that they caused Libya to fall so that they can use that as a route to smuggle in weapons to these terrorist groups from Libya. Because once those weapons get to Libya, there's complete obfuscation from Western forces saying, oh, we don't know. Well, they confiscated NATO weapons. And then after that, we have no idea what happens to it. It goes down to Boko Haram to cause, killings to be like this pestilence that constantly, inhibits Burkina Faso from focusing on its economic goals.
Well, a lot of what happens is like not, again, as you said, like not selling, having some like CIA guy go up to like some Islamic State or Al Qaeda guy and be like, all right, here's some man pads and some, javelin missiles and stuff. But what they will do and what they have done would be like, we're going to introduce a lot of these weapons to a certain supply chain apparatus. And just because they're part of this whole complex supply chain, we know that they're definitely going to go to some Wahhabi groups in the Sahel. So people I think online and in terms of like social media, people think it's kind of like a whole it's backroom deal. Here's a duffel bag full of AK-47s. No, it's you have
exactly.
an established semi-acceptable arms trader who is going to give it to everybody, and it's going to end up in those hands.
Absolutely.
So this is why like arms boycotts of like the UAE, it's like when it's like really problematic when the US is, giving weapons and Israeli spyware to the UAE, because we know they're being given to the RSF, but we're not directly giving it to the RSF, but we know they're going to go to the RSF. It's like that. That's basically how this works all over Africa.
Yeah. Exploiting existing like economic. You already have within the area. I think France will never forgive Burkina Faso for a lot of things. France would be. Let's be clear. Sorry for any French listeners. France would be absolutely destitute without many of its economic interests, without Africa. There'd be zero power in French homes without their economic interest in Africa. And the idea that they would actually have to pay their fair price for those resources brings a cold chill down the current French government. And it's not just that, but I still think they will never forgive. Okay, so when this isn't often talked about when talking about Thomas Sankara. For those that don't know, Thomas Sankara, one of the greatest, most famous socialist revolutionaries within Africa. Within a few years, he uplifted the Burkina Faso's working class material conditions. We're talking education, literacy rates, growing a record amount of trees within the Burkina Faso. Food insecurity damn near eliminated, but was unfortunately assassinated. But he did this all within 4 years. But something he did when he got into power and traveled to France, Thomas Sankara met with the French government, and the first thing he did was put a gun on the table. And I don't know, it's my crack theory that's from that moment, France has never forgiven Burkina Faso, because that was just absolutely humiliating. He went to the French government and said, hey, we're not doing this anymore. He tested that. So people are right that Ibrahim is it's funny that on the year of Thomas Sankara's death, Ibrahim was born. It's yeah.
There is one
reincarnation of the souls.
Hey, I was raised Catholic, but that line, that connection is kind of banger,
One thing I did want to point out recently, and just to point out like how, again, dynamics of empire, like neoliberal messaging is super part of that. There was just some legislation that went down outlawing gay marriage in Burkina Faso. And then everybody is like, every liberal account like involved in quote unquote geopolitics. It's like, oh my God, it's time for an invasion. We're persecuting the LGBTQ community here, but we're about to start ginning up BS over that. And I just wanted to point out that like, that's always like, that's what we do with Iran. That's what we do with, child marriage in Pakistan, because you can actually do child marriage legally in America too. It's all of these kind of like pink washing or anti-pink washing things that have always that we always deploy, not just around the world, but Africa especially. So just wanted to point out that little hypocrisy.
It's falling on its head, though. Like, thanks to the LGBTQ community that's in the revolutionary spaces, they have been so pivotal in holding the line on that and pointing out and deprogramming people and letting people know that it is Western propaganda to try and use, the suffering of the LGBTQ community to manufacture consent for imperialism. And that's why I always say that the revolutionary gay community has the most fuck you energy on the planet.
So, yeah.
But so Traore is he's nationalizing the gold and resources. He's offering free education, free housing, free medical care, free pregnancy, free services for pregnant ladies. This is going to start having a domino effect across Africa. What's facing it to stop it? What mobilizations are happening amongst the imperial powers to put the brakes on that? That's the key question. I don't know the answer to that because it's the cat's out of the bag. I mean, even Langley came out and changed his tune. Did y'all hear about that? Langley came out, Michael Langley, the Marine General of AFRICOM. He came out and said, you know what? Traore is actually doing a great job with his people. And this was a huge backpedaling because they wound up causing a galvanization in Africa. So what's the new strategy?
I mean, I have the answer.
Tell me the answer, Greg.
Well, the entire Trump. Well, okay. Well, I have a possible answer or one of them. Okay. So have you noticed that conflict over the Strait of Taiwan is no longer something that's really been talked about by the administration?
Yeah. Been crazy. It's been interestingly absent.
No, because let's play this out. Because Marco Rubio, when he was first made Secretary of State, was like on friggin' CNN talking about the porcupine strategy in Taiwan, which is where we fortify it so much that it will hurt China too badly to try and grab it, because we can't fight them over the Strait of Taiwan. We'll be, they have a massive land mass and we have a massive navy and neither one can really, well, it's a whole thing. Anyways, we're not talking about it anymore. All right. We're also not talking about the Iran or regime change in Iran anymore. Where AFRICOM is no longer really one of the major combatant commands. It's CENTCOM and it's SouthCom, South America, because they're really doing a refocusing, like in terms of all of our flexible assets into U.S. Southcom over this Venezuela stuff. This is the Monroe Doctrine 2.0. They've said it themselves 100 times. This is our sphere of influence. Okay. We dominate it. And part of that is because we don't have the power projection to wage an amphib war with China over Taiwan. And we can't do anything with Iran. Even during the beginning of the global war on terror, we've never been able to hold Iran. And what are we going to be doing in Africa? Like most Americans, especially most Americans who voted for Trump, think that Africa is a country. Like they literally just think it's a whole country. All right. And they'll be like, why are we invading Africa? So it's just really not working. So like Trump can say stuff about like what's happening in Nigeria with the Christians, like as if like Muslims aren't being killed too by the Islamic State in the West Africa province, because they're a bunch of takfiri idiots. But yeah, he's just saying that to appease his evangelical base, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's not. We're totally refocused in South America.
And I think that's going to backfire too. I think that's going to backfire.
Again, we don't need formal uniformed troops in Africa. We've been talking about this the whole episode. We have these imperial systems and we have private military contractors and we have like colonized leaders that work with us in a comprador status. But like, again, there's not like with the Sahel countries, I don't see any sort of like consent besides some like CIA operation that involves assassination to change anything or move the needle.
I think no, you're right. I think the failure of true regime change in Burkina Faso yeah, multiple aspects. Especially, it's expensive to have military bases, especially in Africa. Even though AFRICOM's stated goals are not only to protect its like they're there to protect their material interests, but another key factor is to stop Chinese influence. And they failed on both fronts. Military bases in Africa are too expensive, especially with the existing contradictions that America is dealing with itself. It's just run around. Why is regime change not as good as it used to be? Because people are also just well aware. They know what they've known. They're standing on the shoulder of giants. They've learned from history on what it looks like, what a color revolution looks like, what does election meddling look like, and why Ibrahim has even been, how many assassination attempts has he avoided so far? I think like over like 20, 30. It's because the people are behind him. The people are just simply behind him. And I think these multiple factors are just why it's just it's going to be hard to pull a lot of the same tricks on Africa. It's fool me once, fool me twice,
and it also doesn't help when the CIA every 20 years releases a bunch of documents being like, hey, you remember that those crazy conspiracies you had about us?
Yeah, we actually did it.
We did everything. Yeah.
Do we put Labumba in the back of a car? We'll tell you in 20 years.
Yeah, and I don't think it's gonna work. I don't think that Southcom is gonna work either. Like, I don't think it's gonna work out for Venezuela. I mean, there's already a story going viral about the attempted assassination or the attempted false flag against a U.S. Navy ship, where supposedly Maduro caught with his forces 3 CIA operatives who were planning on commandeering guns and shooting it at a U.S. ship, tanker ship, or was it tanker? I don't know what it was. But even if that story is not true, it doesn't matter.
Which it really probably isn't true. I mean, look.
It doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's going viral. And
Mm-hmm.
it's going viral amongst everybody, including right-wingers, including MAGA. And they're like, wait a minute. If this is true, then that means Trump had to have been complicit in it since it was a CIA operation. That means he was willing to kill American lives. So much for, America first. So, it doesn't matter if these things are true or not. It matters is the psychological impact that it has on society and what happens amongst Americans. That's how I see it. So I hope to God that story goes viral, even if it's not true, because it sows so much doubt in our government apparatus to the point where we eyeball everything with suspicion at this point, which we should. So it's hard to manufacture consent for anything. It's hard to psyops are really getting complex. Like you can't just throw something out there like the good old days, So
yeah, plus like honestly, like or like expanding this into like more material analysis of like everyone in America's lives. It's like, man, why are we talking about Nigeria? I just want to like not pay $400 in electricity every month,
Boom.
But like apparently I can't do that because I fucked it up because I bought avocado toast twice in college, Like
maybe France should turn off the lights before they leave the home. Maybe it'll save some more money and they won't do regime change. I don't know.
Hey,
sorry, my French slander is crazy. It's always the French. It's always the French. USA too, but the freaking French, man.
I want to go back to the French actually. Like, okay, so this is like should be a conversation among socialists. So my take is on like quote unquote just socialism is the answer. This is the problem. The framing that socialism is only the answer does not take into account that the socialism in these European countries are financed on the backs of African children, working in slave mines. So, which is why socialists, when we say we just need socialism, well, you can have socialism and still have imperialism, which is what France is. It's still doing imperial actions. It's socialist for the citizens of France. They get free healthcare, but who's financing it? It's people in the Congo working in mining. So, which is why I up that. I'll sear socialism and up you by intercommunalism, which basically was Huey P. Newton's philosophy that none of us are really truly free. We are not truly living in a socialist world until every single country experiences the same benefits that every other community does. And that is where you will see Europeans check out. They'll check out the conversation because it's like, yeah, they love their socialism, but they don't want to hear about what their nation did to get to finance it. And that's
I think when it comes to, sorry, you didn't finish your question. I think when it comes to socialist aspects within a capitalist mode of production or a capitalist economic framework within the state, I prefer. I think that's when I always use the framework of welfare state or welfare industries or implementations, because there are socialist aspects, but within the umbrella of the capitalist economic framework, just like you said, it still is on the back of an oppressed people, a permanent underclass within the economic framework, where the socialist aspects benefit to recognize citizenry, but it is still using aspects of, like you said, imperialism in order to fund it. That's why I wouldn't necessarily call them socialist governments, because I'm not a fan of the Scandinavian model. Unfortunately, when that gets called socialism, I get a small aneurysm, because there's a clear example in the modern day of what it looks like when a socialist government when a socialist government doesn't need to do imperialism to uplift another country. The
Cuba.
Fucking Belt and Road Initiative. Oh, Cuba too. Shouts out to the Cuban doctor program. That's actually huge. My own mother was delivered by a Cuban doctor. They were huge in terms of the health infrastructure within the Congo. Shouts out to Big Daddy Fidel Castro, 100%. Or maybe I wouldn't be here today. We don't know. The Belt and Road Initiative is a clear example of how a socialist mode of production, a socialist state would interact with other nations. Because to give a super quick, rough understanding of why I'm making this claim, China is the largest exporter in the world. Because of their mode of production, it is to their benefit that there are more developed nations. So it's to their benefit to help with the aid and development of Africa. Because now they don't only have to sell like tier 1 products, like maybe like a sickle or a hoe, to be rudimentary, but now they can sell them a tractor if they developed the factories or other aspects of their industry enough. That is to their benefit. And I say to their benefit because so often people hate the idea that people can just be altruistic and good. I'm like, okay, well, if you think about it economically, this is why it's to their benefit that Africa is developed. They want a developed Africa, and that's the socialist thinking. You don't I say all that to say that a good world, a better world is possible.
100%.
And hopefully we're getting there. I think it's gonna get worse before it gets worse, especially if you live in the United States. Like, get ready.
I'm positive about the USA as well. I think in the same way that Russia and the former Soviet satellite states were in worse conditions than all of Western Europe, and the USSR uplifts in the great heights, China at one point was no different than was the poorest country in the world, multiple warring states. What China is today is USSR. What China is today is a damn near miracle. There was at one point the USA and Europe and the European countries allied to have a balkanized China. Mm-hmm. And what Mao and the Long March were able to accomplish was unite everybody. And in that same way that from the USSR to PRC became the greatest examples of a united people, I see the USA even topping that in the future. I don't see a balkanized United States in our future. I really do feel that that we bond over America, despite frictions, whether it be racial vitriol or other artificial conflicts. I do think there is a bond of an American identity that is unique within the human experience. It is a nation state project that has just never been done before with multiple people. And I think when it comes to our future, again, I'm positive. I'm an optimist, guys. When it comes to our future socialist revolution, we'll have something so great that'll even outshine the PRC.
Well, we're seeing. I've constantly seeing like positive signs. Like while everybody's focused on hard actions that the U.S. government is doing, whether it be the Trump administration or Biden administration, what I'm seeing is I focus on the psychology of Americans. We are seeing some crossovers between even the most extreme right and the most extreme left. Yes, there's obviously some very problematic viewpoints on the extreme right. I'm not focusing on those viewpoints. What I'm focusing on is the infiltration of leftism in the extreme right that is starting to bleed over, because I'm not worried about extreme right-wing ideology bleeding over into the extreme left. I'm really not. We see some of that, but I'm not worried about it. Once you've become educated on a lot of these things, it's hard to like unsee it. But I am confident that leftism is going to bleed into the far right. We are seeing people like, let's take the fucking your young Hitler, Nick Fuentes, right? Nick Fuentes has the groypers that follow him, right? Well, Nick Fuentes, what he wound up doing, as opposed to what was probably intended, his following has turned his audience into taking interest in the Palestine movement simply because they hate Israel. By proxy, they also hate Jews. But regardless, now that they're in this space of the pro-Palestinian movement, who are they going to be around? They're going to be seeing videos from you across their For You page. They're going to be seeing videos from Greg Stoker, Mo Hams, you name it, Amanda Seals. They're going to be seeing this across their For You page. And that ideology that we're spreading is going to infect them. It is going to start creating doubts where maybe the white supremacy will fade away and simply the consciousness of what the ruling class is doing to all of us will grow. I see that happening more likely than...
Yeah, I do think it's a good point to say, like, I'm not as concerned as right-wing ideology infecting like left-wing spaces. Could you imagine going from like, oh yeah, it's totally the capitalists, to being like, oh no, just the Jews, you know?
Crazy regressivism. No, crazy. No, it's because you can't be addressing material conditions, and on top, which is pretty much how, no matter people may dislike it, but that's pretty much how Trump won. Being a populist was just addressing material conditions. But you cannot be addressing material conditions with concrete material conclusions. You just can't beat that, and that's what socialism, communism, Marxism offers, and offers a science to address these contradictions, to address these material conditions. And even if you are quote unquote socially conservative, there's great examples in history. Cuba was at one point was extremely socially conservative, but they still implemented very progressive solutions, all backed by scientific socialism, Marxism, Leninism. And now, and because of that, because think about it, if you're an LGBT community, if the government implements a law that uplifts the working class community, that doesn't exclude the LGBT community. That's the true lifting of all boats. So it naturally uplifts everybody, and until you have LGBT people within spaces to be like, okay, by the way, these part of the law is a no-go. But that doesn't happen if they're targeted or become a permanent underclass like in these other countries. Sorry, I think I skipped over a part. But the idea that Cuba became one of the first countries within the Western Hemisphere to legalize gay marriage, even though at one point they were the most socially conservative at the time, it tells you that when you implement leftist policies economically, it will undoubtedly change the conversation socially. So in the same way people try to pinkwash Burkina Faso, we also have to think about it. But Ibrahim Traoré didn't make a law saying that, oh yeah, by the way, gay people can't benefit from our new textile industry. They can't benefit from the free education. They can't benefit from all these things. That's not the case at all. And it's also not an example of Ibrahim Traoré himself or what the movement represents. These are cultural artifacts that just need the education and upliftment to understand that this is just not the right way to treat your fellow human being. And again, we have examples of history of that actually occurring.
Yeah. So take that, y'all. Well, guys, I think I got a heart out.
This was awesome,
He's
guys.
got to go. Hey, do you have to harvest your cabbage?
Why
Not
do you
the
keep
cabbage.
talking about my like new like?
Because,
Sorry.
dude, it's just who's my little farmer? Who's my little
Yeah.
farmer?
I'm
Greg
a
is.
farmer. I'm gonna ask the anarchist for gardening techniques. So
the best at.
It's my
honestly.
newest obsession.
So, guys, this has been kind of one of our kind of more freeform Africa episodes. Again, like not a lot of people have ever really delved into this. I'm sure like a lot of our audience maybe has more than like the average U.S. citizen, but it's expansive. And what can it really help you understand what's happening in Africa? It's just looking at patterns, because the U.S. imperial machine it only has one playbook, really. So this is why you can make all these parallels from like the RSF to M23 in Rwanda to freaking like idiot PMCs running around Haiti from Colombia, facilitated by Blackwater's Eric Prince. Okay, like we got one playbook. It's not that crazy, and of course, there's a lot of regional differences in governments, differences in leadership throughout Africa. But the U.S. imperial playbook doesn't change. So hopefully we did an okay job highlighting that, and apparently the future's a little bit hopeful. But that's all for me.
Thank you, guys. I'm very much a big fan of you guys' podcast. I was glad I was able to do my spit take here. I'm always trying to do better on just making, because my goal, especially when it comes to political discussion, is just to make it easier to get into it. I think I'm a chill guy, so I just try to make the conversation chill, because people are dealing with a lot. My fellow Americans are dealing with a lot, and but they still want to be informed. So being able to distill that information in a way that that's just not only easy to understand, but something that can just sit with without feeling too overwhelmed by it is always the goal. And I'm glad you guys gave me the opportunity to do it here. Yeah.
Well, dude, I've been a big fan of you for over a year. And the only reason why this episode didn't happen a year ago is because you didn't see my DM. That's it. But
it's crazy.
You're a chill guy, then we need to chill in LA, bro. We still haven't done that yet. How long have we been talking, bro? It's been like 2
I just got a car. Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen, man. You make it out to the Inland Empire at all?
I can. I was just supporting public transportation in the city.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm down.
All right. Well, before you guys
yeah.
get all excited and dock your all's addresses, for the couple of crazy Zionists that hate watch this show, I would say, guys, thanks so much for listening. If you made it to the end, hopped around a lot of bit, but that's a lot of bit. No, again, we're having problems with the words today. We hopped around a lot of bit, but hopefully this has been informative, and we really appreciate you watching or listening. And we will see you actually tomorrow, unless this is published tomorrow, for our Patreon only segment, Fuck Around Fridays, where we laugh as the world burns and talk about how, now that we're entering a new phase of paramilitary contractors, we might just be lucky enough to be killed by an Amazon corporate security wet team in the future. So on that note, we will see you next time on Colonial Outcasts. Cheers, y'all.